All right. Well, welcome everybody to this month's Portals Community Call. I'm Jason Gumpert from MS Dynamics World. I'm really pleased to welcome everyone once again. I am here with Nicholas Hayduk to bring us forward on today's session about contacts related to multiple accounts. Just a couple housekeeping notes before we get started. First, we do welcome your questions. Look for the questions block if you're new to the event. And you can ask your questions anytime. Nick always does a great job keeping an eye on that as we go. We're also recording today's event. We'll be making that available after the session ends in case you miss any part of it. So with that, Nick, I'm going to hand things over to you.
All right, thank you, Jason. Welcome, everyone. As Jason mentioned today, we're talking about contacts related to multiple accounts. But before we dive into that topic, we have quite a bit of news with the Power Platform release wave plan coming out. And a few new other updates from the product team. So let's get going here. So a quick intro, if this is your kind of first time ever joining us, my name is Nicholas Hayduk. I'm the president and software engineer at Engineered Code Consulting Inc., based here in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. At Engineered Code, we're a consulting firm that specializes in Power Pages, Power Platform, web development, WordPress, that sort of thing. We've also got EC Learn, which is our learning management system for the Power Platform that allows you to create and distribute courses to users, both internally, who internal users can take it using Power Apps, model-driven apps, and then external users can take the courses that you create using Power Pages. So that's what keeps us busy during the day. If we're not already connected on LinkedIn, please feel free to do that. You can also follow our content. You can reach out on Twitter or X. We've got our blog posts. I actually have a kind of a companion blog post that goes along with this session today. Part of today's session, I'll be showing some code to on how to build some account switcher functionality, and so I've got a blog post with that code in it. We've also got our YouTube channel where we post our weekly tips. We post these recordings as well as some other content that we put out focused on Power Pages. And I've also got a podcast, Refresh the Cache, that I do with George Dubinsky. There was a new episode out recently, and we've recorded a couple more, so those should be out soon as well. Yeah, if you're looking for Power Pages content, we've got a few options out there. So again, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if we haven't already done so. As always, just want to say thank you to Jason and the team at MS Dynamics World for their support on these calls. I know we're in the mid 60s now for a number of calls that we've done, so it's been a great collaboration between ourselves and MS Dynamics World, and really appreciate everything they've done to help get this content out to the community. Okay, in terms of our agenda, same as always, we'll talk about the news. We'll then get into today's topic, which is contacts related to multiple accounts. And then we'll talk about the date and time of our next community call, and there should be some time for some Q&A as well. So, all right, let's get into our portal news. So we're going to get started with the release wave. So a couple weeks back, Microsoft released the plan for the 2025 release wave 2. So for those of you who may be kind of newer to the Microsoft business application space, the release waves, there's two every year. Basically, release waves are a 6-month period where features come out. So release wave 1 goes from April to I guess it would be September, and then the release wave 2 goes from August or from October until I guess so that would make it March. So and then generally in advance of that, so generally it's about 3 months in advance. So for example, this one comes out in July because they're talking about what is the plan for the 6 months between October and March. So the release wave 2 for 2025, Microsoft puts out that plan a few months in advance so you can kind of see what they expect to be coming. The plans are just that, they're plans, they're not guarantees. So the things that we may see in the plans The dates could change. Some things can be added, things can be removed. So it is our best sense of what we might see, but we just never know what's going to actually come down the pipe. When it comes to Power Pages specifically, um, I can certainly say with confidence that what gets announced in the plan is not the only things we'll see. We often see much more, many more things than that coming out from the product team as they announce them on their blog. But often, kind of the big ticket items are announced as part of that plan. So, what do we have in? What can we expect in kind of starting in October? Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that it's not like October 1st all these features just get released. These things can be released at any point within that 6 month time frame, or like I said, not at all. But usually the individual pages that kind of describe these features will give you an indication as to when they expect to deliver them. But these are the features that you can expect to see at some point in between October and March. Um, so if you follow along with Microsoft content at all, you'll know that agents are a big thing. So we do have a couple of agents coming for Power Pages. So one is kind of a more of the behind the scenes admin type agent, and that's for admin trust, security, and compliance. So there's going to be an agent that can help analyze what's going on with your the setup of your Power Pages sites and provide recommendations that way. Um, Microsoft is also planning on having an agent to help makers with security. So this would be to configure roles, web roles, permissions, authentication, that sort of thing. So be able to do those by interacting with an agent versus kind of point and click and going through that process. This third one here is the big one. This is the one that's getting all the chatter. This is the one that everyone's kind of talking about, and that is the unification of Power Pages and Dataverse permissions. So right now, Power Pages permissions and Dataverse permissions are very separate. They're very different things. Power Pages is based on contacts and web roles. Dataverse is based on users and security roles. And so they are really kind of in no way related. Well, soon that's going to change. Now, nothing really is changing with Power Pages specifically in that you'll still use web roles, you'll still use contacts, but what's happening is behind the scenes, Microsoft is actually synchronizing those contacts and those web roles so that actual users are created and actual security roles are created that correspond to each of the web roles and contacts that you have for your particular site. What this means is that as users are interacting with your Dataverse data via Power Pages, so these would be contacts. So as those contacts are interacting with Dataverse, because there's also a user account associated with that contact, things like the modified by or the created by accounts can now reflect the actual kind of contact that did it, because it will represent the user that is linked to that contact. Same with auditing. So when you have auditing feature, who edited what row or what columns, again, because those will be those are happening on Power Pages, the users that are being synchronized for those contacts will be in that audit trail. So you have a much better idea as to who's doing what. As of right now, all of those kind of get lumped in under one giant kind of service account related to Power Pages. So there also should be some performance gains that occur when that happens, because Microsoft is baking some of the security trimming that exists in Power Pages. That will be kind of more baked into the platform, so we should see some security or some performance improvements as well. But yeah, that's certainly the big one on this list, is the fact that Microsoft has gone through what I think is quite a bit of effort. Not only the Power Pages team, but there certainly would have had to been some development just within the base kind of platform within Dataverse to make all these things happen. Because the reasons they weren't like that before is that the platform just didn't offer some of these capabilities. So obviously the Power Pages team was working very closely with the Dataverse team to make some enhancements to make this all possible. So very curious to see what this looks like and play with it. And see what this ends up being. But yeah, this is a pretty big change. I kind of compare it to when we got the web API, that was pretty revolutionary. Enhanced data model has been a big change. The Bootstrap 5 this is one of the bigger announcements for sure. All right, moving on. Within the Power Platform CLI, you will be able to create and delete websites. Now, just to clarify, this is really just the Azure resources associated with a website. So if you create a website using the Power Platform CLI, that just means it's like reactivating a website in the Power Pages Maker experience. So this is not going to install solutions, install data. It's just if you have website data in your Dataverse environment and you want to enable all the Azure resources to get the site up and running, you'll be able to do that with the Power Platform CLI. And same with deleting. That's going to delete the Azure resources, but it's not going to touch your data nor the solutions. It's just kind of performing those steps of deleting the Azure resources associated with the Power Pages website. And finally, there's built into, I believe it's VS Code for desktop. There's some capabilities to do code security scans of your Power Pages code. So if you're writing JavaScript, that sort of thing, there'll be some built-in code analysis, security analysis type stuff as well. So those are the things that are in the list for the release wave 2, which again is October 2025 through March 2026. Quick check, no questions. All right, moving on to the next thing. So in addition to those release wave notes, there were a number of blog posts put out by the product team announcing kind of new features. So I'll just quickly go through those. You can now, I think this is preview, which is natural language search for lists. So when you add a list to a page in Power Pages, you'll be able to use natural language to search through those lists. Another one is the Power Pages Home Action Center. That's kind of a hub for a bunch of different things within the Power Platform uh, Admin Center, I believe. So I believe it was in preview, and so that is now kind of going GA. This was one that was a little something I didn't know was coming, and it's kind of an interesting thing. But there's support for single page applications for Power Pages now. Now, we've always been able to build single page applications on top of Power Pages, but now what there is kind of a specific pattern and a specific way to upload essentially a React app that you create to your Power Pages site. So there's some commands to kind of upload and download a React app to a Power Pages site. And this is again most useful if you want, instead of using kind of all the out of the box designer tools, if you're using Power Pages kind of as a hosting mechanism for a single page application that you build as a React app, you can now upload and kind of manage it using the Power Platform CLI. And finally, this was relatively recent here in the last couple of days, I believe, bot protection rules. So just more things kind of with the whole kind of web application firewall protection security for Power Pages. So there are some, I believe, new bot protection rules and enhanced control over some of the managed rules that you'd see come out of the box with Power Pages. So just some enhancements to the WAP there. So yeah, quite a bit in terms of news for Power Pages recently. We'll see here. We're kind of halfway through summer here in the Northern Hemisphere. We'll see if the cadence here remains the same. It's been, there's been lots. We'll see if maybe this gets a little quiet for a month or two, or if they're going to keep announcing new things. We'll see. Okay. Quick check, no questions. So I will move on to today's topic. So today's topic is contacts related to multiple accounts. And so this is actually something that's been coming up for many years. Many sites wouldn't run into this particular problem, but we've run into many sites that do. And that's the idea of kind of out of the box with Dataverse, you have contacts and accounts, and you have a contact and it has a single parent account, which in many cases you've got that does represent the typical real world scenario where you've got a bunch of contacts and they work for a company, and so they have a single parent account. However, situations do exist where a contact could realistically have multiple parent accounts, in which case the Dataverse kind of model doesn't necessarily support that out of the box. And when it comes to Power Pages, how would we kind of handle that situation where you do have a single contact that wants to interact with multiple accounts? So like I mentioned, there's that out of the box parental relationship that contacts have. It's actually to customers. So that allows it to be both a contact, so you can have a parent contact, or more traditionally a parent account. But like I said, you can only select a single account. It's a lookup, and you can only select a single account for it to be the for it to be the parent. But like I said, there's many kind of business cases where you do have multiple accounts that a contact needs to engage with. Um, the one that we've seen quite a bit is the kind of the subcontractor. So there may be a subcontractor who ends up working for multiple multiple accounts. Sometimes they're like a specialist that does certain things that they may end up working for multiple organizations. As an example, engineered code, we work with lots of partners on Power Pages stuff. So if all these partners had an account into a particular system, and we want to log in rather than managing a bunch of different accounts, it'd be nice to have one and say, oh, no, we're going in as partner A, and now we're going in as partner B, that sort of thing. Another common scenario is when you are using, if a company has kind of subsidiaries and you're using multiple accounts to represent, like perhaps their different locations, their different geographies, that sort of thing. You may say, hey, I work for all these different companies, but I want to see what the West Coast people are, or the New York or the LA office, that sort of thing. So being able to switch between those different accounts can be very useful. So what we're going to do is actually we're going to look at a couple of different options that we look at, or that we generally consider when we run into these types of requirements. Um, and in our particular case, because I always go back to my sample site is golf related. That's what I do for fun. Um, when I'm not working is often you can find me on the golf course. So all of my examples are usually golf course related. So in this case, we're going to assume that our Dataverse environment is owned by a golf course management company. They have a few different courses, and they hire various contractors, which are accounts, to perform maintenance on their courses. And so they've created a Power Pages site to allow these contractors to manage their maintenance requests. However, we have a subcontractor who happens to actually work at multiple of these contractors, and he is very in demand, hard to find specialist. So he does something very special, and so he does that for many for different contractors in the space because he's kind of the only one in town who can do this. So rather than have this subcontractor have different accounts for each one of his contractors that he works with, and log in and kind of see that, wouldn't it be nice if that subcontractor only needed a single username and password, and he can see all of the records across all of the different contractors that he works with? That's kind of the goal here. What we generally see is that there are two primary ways that we've seen this done. So one is to essentially just ignore a parent account, and just create your own relationship between account and contact. So create an end-to-end or many-to-many relationship between account and contact, and then just build all your permissions based on that. So if we're looking at, say, maintenance requests, you can say I have a contact. They can have many accounts. Those accounts can have maintenance requests. And so when you go and look at my maintenance requests, you can see all the maintenance requests across all of those different accounts. Power Pages, the security model, when we talk about table permissions, it totally supports many-to-many relationships. That is totally something that can happen. However, the other option, and this is probably, I would say, more often what we see people actually asking for, is the ability to change essentially the context of what account they're looking at the portal in. So they want to look at the portal in the context of contractor A, or as in the context of contractor B, rather than seeing all the maintenance requests, they want to say, hey, I want to log in as this particular, you know, and view it as this particular contractor or as this, as a different particular contractor. So those are the two options that we generally see. We're going to take a look at kind of both those options and what those options entail as part of our kind of walkthrough today. Now, before I jump over to the code here, let me just take questions. I got Cheryl mentioning UI enhancements using SPA and PCS would be a great subject for future webinars. Totally agree. We have done a number of calls. We've done one specifically on PCF. We've done one specifically on React. But honestly, I think that's probably the number one topic that we probably couldn't do too many of. Just more calls about, very specific implementations of, hey, we're going to build this UI and kind of walk through that. So excellent feedback, and I think you're right on the money there. Okay, so let's jump into an example here. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is how do we set this up just to, if we're creating a new relationship between account and contact. Now, spoiler alert, I've done some of this already just to make sure that I was speaking correctly and wasn't making anything up. But I'll show you the relationship that I've created. So on my contact record, if I go into my relationships, I have created an additional relationship, a many-to-many relationship between account and contact. So if I was just looking at setting this up for a simple scenario where when I log in, I can see all the maintenance requests for all of the different accounts that I have. What I'm going to do is we'll just check here. I'm going to go into maintenance requests. So I have one maintenance request here, fix the flood, and that is for Augusta National. And the contractor here is Acme Golf Maintenance. Just let's do here plant grass, golf course. I'm going to say Augusta National again. Olive, T Olive. I'm just going to pick my other contractor here. I think we got sample account for PCC. Ooh, we have a few in there. So I'm going to just pick that. So I've now got two different accounts here now. Of course, now that I look at this, I've got too many sample accounts for PCC, but we'll deal with that here in a second. So if I check my actual contract, so I got my EC contractor here, this account. I'm just going to blow that away for right now. So they've got no parent account. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into my related accounts. And I've got all records. Oh man, I got too many samples. I'm going to pick one with a different name. That's going to just end up being confusing. Why don't I actually just create another one? I'm going to call this Coyote Golf Maintenance. Okay, so I've created these two different things. Changes were saved. Add. Let me get rid of sample account just to keep things clean here. So I've got these two accounts. I got Acme and I've got Coyote. So those are the two accounts that I would have access to. And then I'm just going to flip back here to my maintenance request. I'm going to change this to Coyote. So now what I'm going to do is I've got my relationship. I've linked my contact to those two accounts. I've got a couple of maintenance requests for those accounts. Now what I'm going to do is just look at what the permissions would have to be to make sure that that's all kind of set up properly. So I'm going to go into security here. I'm going to look at my table permissions, and I'm going to look at my my account relationship. So what I'm going to do is I've got this account end-to-end. So this is my relationship here. So I've got a table permission that lets me read all of the accounts that I'm related to. And as a child of that one, I'm going to reactivate this one here. So I've got a child permission that gives me access to all the maintenance requests related to the accounts that I'm related to via that end-to-end relationship. So let's see if we can get that to work. I'm going to load up my portal here. Go here. And you can see I can see two different maintenance requests. Fix the flood and plant the grass. If I go back to this thing, and let's just get rid of Acme for a second. And if I go back here, if I preview this, I should see the one disappear because I no longer have the rights to see that one, right? So this is a very simple way to say, hey, I can see all the maintenance requests across all the different accounts that I'm related to. To make things simple, I could add a column here that said which subcon or which contractor is this for, and that would be pretty clear. And in some, this is a pretty simple way to handle dealing with multiple, contact having multiple accounts. However, what if we wanted to allow them to actually just kind of pick between and look at all the different things in context, in context of a single account? The way that we've done that historically is by leveraging the parent account functionality. So rather than using that many-to-many we've created, which you'll see here in a second that we still use it, but not in the same way. So we make all of our permissions based on our parent account, but we actually allow the user to dynamically change their own parent account on the fly. So let's see what that would look like if we do that. So in this case, if I go back to my tab here, we can see I have no parent account. So I'm going to go back to my table of permissions. I'm going to disable this permission here. So this means I no longer have access to the maintenance requests based on my many-to-many relationship. The only maintenance request permission I have is for the accounts, and this is my parent account. So basically for the maintenance requests associated to my parent account. So let's give that a look to see what happens when I reload this page. I would expect me to see 0 things in this list because I have no parent account. So there are no maintenance requests associated with the parent accounts that I don't have. Now, if I were to go into my contact and just put in, say, Coyote Golf Maintenance in here and click Save, now if I were to refresh this, I should see that one maintenance request that I created for that one. Perfect. Now, how do we let the person who's on the portal switch between those different options? So first of all, we are going to use that relationship that I created. So both of the solutions that we're talking about today do involve creating that many-to-many relationship. But in that first case, we use that many-to-many relationship for the permissions of how we got to the things that we're interested in. In this situation, we're going to use that many-to-many relationship, but only in order to define which accounts we can switch between. So if I go back to this accounts, where are we here? Accounts. We got Coyote. I'm going to add Acme. There we go. So this relationship defines, here are the options that I'm going to allow the user to pick between. So if we were to set up this contact for the first time, we know they're a contact that may have multiple parent accounts. We define these multiple parent or the different possibilities using this relationship. And then you'll see how we'll use this to drive the interface that we're going to create that actually allows the user to switch between the options. So let's look at how we can build a pretty quick little simple interface to allow the user to pick between Acme and Coyote. Now, right now, again, we have Coyote set up. So if I were to go back here, preview, desktop, I still think that this would say plant grass because, again, the permissions on Power Pages in terms of getting access to the maintenance requests are only based on the parent account. It's no longer considering that end-to-end relationship that I've created. So the first thing, what we're going to actually do is we're going to build just like a little account switcher thing that's a drop-down. The drop-down is going to have a list of all the accounts that we have access to. And when you change the value in that drop-down, what's going to happen is we're going to update the parent account based on whatever you select. We're going to refresh the page and we're going to see the context of the whole Power Pages site change based on that. So the first thing we need to do is, I'm going to flip over to some actual code here. Now in the footer, I've just put this in the footer. Often you might see this in the header. I've got a blog post on this, but there you can actually, if you put JavaScript in the header, you don't have access to jQuery. It's just kind of simpler in this case for me to throw it in the footer, just as a sample. You might want to change that a little bit if you were to do it for real, but just to keep things simple, I'm going to throw this in the footer. So in the footer, I've just included this account switcher web template, so I can keep all of my code here in this account switcher template. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use Liquid and fetch XML to get the list of accounts that are in that many-to-many relationship. Because what I want to do is I want to generate a select element that has the options for all the accounts that I should have access to. So I'm going to use one of my favorite tools in the XRM toolbox, and I'm going to use this tool right here, and it is the Fetch XML Builder from Jonas Rapp, and I use this to create this Fetch XML query that basically gets me the name and the account ID for all the accounts where my current contact, and you'll see we'll fill this in right here, where this contact, the currently logged in contact, is associated via that particular relationship. So this query right here, if I am to borrow this, I can put it in here, and what I can do is I can create so I can create a fetch XML query and a there we go. So I've created this fetch XML. I'm using the fetch XML tag. I'm calling my variable related accounts, and I've copied in my fetch XML query, and I've changed this one right here. So before, when I had it in here, I had a hard-coded value. Now I'm using Liquid to just get the ID of the current contact. So again, this is going to retrieve a list of all the accounts that are in this relationship right here. So if I were to refresh the page, I'd expect to see Acme and Coyote Golf. Those would be the ones that particular fetch XML query is grabbing. Now what I want to do is I just want to loop around the results of that query. So I can do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in so there's my loop. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to create a select element in HTML. I'm going to call it, I'm going to give it an ID of account switcher. Move that down here. And then within the loop, I'm just going to create an option that includes the name and the value. Let me just get this here. The name and the value. There we go. So I'm creating this select element, given an ID of account switcher. So for each result in here, I'm just creating an option where the account ID is the value and the name is the display name. So I'm going to save this, and let's see if that does what I'd like it to do. Again, we're looking for this new drop-down in the footer. There it is. So you can see I've got Acme and Coyote Golf Maintenance both in there. There we go. Now, just to confirm, if I go back to my table permissions, I've still got this table permission here to give me access to that end-to-end relationship. I just really need it for the read permissions because I just need to be able to kind of list all of the accounts. So in order for that fetch XML query to work, this permission still has to exist. So that's why this one's active. I no longer need the related maintenance request for that one, but I still need that many-to-many so that that fetch XML query can get the list of accounts. Okay, so we've got our list of accounts. Now what we want to do is one little enhancement, and that is we want to make sure that whichever one is selected right now ends up selected on the page. So when the page loads right now, it would just show whichever one is first in the list. But if maybe the second one, in this case, we got Coyote Golf Management. Let me just double check what do I have here. Yeah, Coyote. So you can see here when I refresh the page, it shows me as Acme Golf Maintenance, even though Coyote is the one I got selected. So we're just going to add a little snippet here to select. So if the account in our loop is equal to the parent customer of our current contact, then we want to add that selected attribute. So this just, as it's going through and creating those things, it will select the one that is the user's actually kind of related to right now. So let's just give that a quick test. There we go. You can see when the page loads here, it's going right to Coyote Golf Maintenance because that is what this particular contact has selected as their parent account. So we got a real simple interface here, drop down. All we need to do is, what if I click Acme? Well, we wanted to then update the contact's parent account. Now, you can just craft a web API request from scratch. You could certainly do that. If you like saving time, there's another great tool in the XRM toolbox from Guido Prete, who he's created the Dataverse REST builder. So you can go into here and you can say, hey, I want to create an update of a particular row, and you can literally just like copy and paste, and he's got the code here for what does a patch look like for this particular column, and you can grab that code from there. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to start with flipping back to here. So we're going to start off, we're just going to put a script tag in our template. So we're going to do a document ready, just to keep things all contained, and we're going to do an end script tag here. Now in our document ready, what we're going to do is we're just going to handle the change event of our account switcher dropdown, of our account switcher select. So, and then all we're going to do in that handler event is we're going to copy and paste in the code that we got from the Dataverse REST builder with just a couple small changes that I will point out. So in this case, this is the parent customer ID account. So we want to update basically who their parent account is. Use this @odatabind syntax. This is how you, why they had to make it like this. That's just kind of how OData has defined it to work. So this is the syntax if you're kind of setting that lookup, and then you set it equal to the account. Now in this case, the syntax is /accounts, and then you use this syntax with the brackets here, and then you put in the ID. So in this case, we can just get the value of this. Now we're in the context here of our account switcher, so we're grabbing the value from the currently selected option. So this would be the ID of that account. So we're setting this, we're setting the parent account to be this /accounts, and then the brackets and the ID of the one that we just chose. And then we're calling the web API safe Ajax. We'll talk about this here in a second, but we're doing a patch just to update that record. We're then saying content type is JSON. The URL is this. We're using Liquid again to insert the ID of the current contact. And if successful, we're just doing a window.location.reload. So if it does, if they change the dropdown to a different thing, once it's set that parent account appropriately, what's going to happen is the page is going to reload. Just one last thing we have to add here, and this is just kind of a chunk of code that you'll probably see a lot if you're doing web API development with Power Pages, but there's this kind of chunk of this web API safe Ajax definition. So I'm just going to copy this. This is provided by Microsoft in the Power Pages Microsoft Learn documentation. So that's just where this particular function comes from. So I'm just going to copy and paste it here. Usually we suggest you kind of centralize that, maybe put that somewhere so it's available on every page for you, but I'm just going to be lazy as part of this demo and drop it right in here. So again, what we're doing is when we're binding a change event to the account switcher dropdown that we've already created. When that changes, we're just grabbing the value from the currently selected option, which has the ID of the new parent account. We're performing the web API operation to patch that record and update the parent account of the currently logged in contact. So let's see if we can get that to work. I'm going to go over here, kill the cache. So we got Coyote Golf Maintenance. That's the plant one. Let's see, does that make sense? Plant is Coyote. Now if we switch to Acme, hopefully we'll see Fix the Flood. Let's see if this is going to work. So I've done that. The page is reloading, and now we can see Fix the Flood. So certainly lots of room for improvement in terms of making it robust and probably making a little nicer user interface. But in relatively short period of time, we've been able to build this little account switcher thing that causes basically almost the entire experience in terms of what the data is for this user based on that new relationship that we created. Now, there are a couple of things that I've done behind the scenes here that I want to point out. In terms of site settings, I've enabled the web API. So let's look at those settings. So in order to update the contact, I've enabled the web API for the contact table. So that's right here. And then I've also enabled, you have to enable the specific field. So in this case, I've enabled the parent customer ID underscore account field. So I've enabled, I had to enable the web API for my contact. And then we have some table permissions that we have to make sure we have. In this case, we need this is a little much, but we need the ability to append to these accounts here. And then we have the self-referential on the contact so that we can update the contact permissions as well. So the account permissions we have, or the table permissions we have, are this one, again, for that relationship that we created that we're using just to define which ones show up in the list, which ones we can switch to, and then we're using just the parent account relationship to give us access to those maintenance requests. So again, if we go back here, I can see Fix the Flood. If I go down here, you can see now it's defaulting to Acme when the page loads. If I switch to Coyote, off goes that request, reloads the page, and I'm switched to this other one. The other thing that's kind of great about this technique is that using the web API, we don't have to deal with any sort of caching nonsense. Because the web API updates that contact within the cache of Power Pages, immediately, we don't got to wait 2 minutes. We don't have to wait any period of time. Immediately, as soon as that page reloads, we see that new parent account being reflected. So again, it's relatively simple. You could probably make this drop down a little fancier. Again, if you have lots of accounts to pick between, if you got 20 accounts, maybe a drop down isn't the best option. You might want to build some sort of combo box or some sort of search interface that lets people flip between them. But lots of jQuery widgets out in the world to help you with that sort of thing. But it is relatively straightforward to kind of give people the correct or give them the ability to switch their own parent account. One of the tricky things on projects, if you actually implement something like this, is just how do you figure out what's the process for this contact to get the appropriate list of accounts in this list. Often that's just a manual thing. When you're setting up someone, you have to go in and add the people to the list. But even though you got this functionality, there is something that has to be done here to actually fill in the list for the contacts to say, hey, here's the list of all the accounts that this particular person can switch between. So don't overlook that. That can sometimes in some organizations be a little bit more complicated to actually, especially if you've got an existing implementation, to go back through to a bunch of accounts and start defining, hey, which ones can they switch between? All right. So let me go through the questions here. Just trying to see if they go from top to okay. Unify. Okay, so I got one not related to today's topic, which we will get to. Oh, sorry. Can you remove the Copilot tab in VS Code so that we can see the code better, please? Sorry about that. Yeah, let me. I can open that up. Again, this code is literally kind of line for line copied from my blog post. So if you head over to engineeredcode.com, I published a new blog post this morning. That is literally this code is up there. But yeah, sorry, I should have had that Copilot tab closed. What else do we got here? And then we've got someone asking about caching. Yeah, so I think I hopefully covered the caching thing. It's actually a situation where caching is not a terrible, this actually handles caching quite well, so it's not something we have to worry about. Now, someone else, Eshkar also mentioned impacts if multiple users want to work on different accounts at the same time. So if multiple users want to work on different accounts at the same time. So I'm going to assume that you mean so if a single person wants to work on multiple accounts at the same time, then this doesn't really work. If multiple users want to work on the same account at the same time, excuse me, if multiple users want to work on the same account, that would just kind of be similar to how Power Pages would work if you didn't have an account switcher. So I think this kind of holds up in most of those scenarios. But if multiple users want to work on different accounts at the same time, this is kind of a per person thing, right? So that one person can switch between as many of the different accounts that they have access as they can. Okay, so other than I know Kim has a question that's not related to today's topic, which is great, but we'll get to that kind of at the end here. I think I've covered all of the questions related to today's topic. That is what I wanted to cover today. Again, I've got that blog post with the actual code in it if you want to reference it. Let's see here. Oh, Cheryl says, look into something that Sash, the requirements to use a splash screen with all available accounts for selection. Yeah, we have seen this where people want to be, they want the person to be prompted basically at the beginning when they when they log in, that's where they want the person to make the selection. And so usually the way that we would accomplish that is you just put something essentially in the header that, if you're using something like a cookie or local storage to store, has someone selected their current option yet, or so then when you log in, they haven't set it yet, and then you can kind of clear that on logout perhaps. But yeah, building out kind of a splash screen is just kind of more of a JavaScript exercise, which is certainly possible in Power Pages. Okay, so let me just quickly flip back to my presentation, which is this one. Okay, so our next call will be August 28th, same time. No topic decided yet. Always looking for suggestions if anyone has any. This topic today was brought up by someone who was asking me some questions on LinkedIn. And again, it was something that we've kind of dealt with a few times. So I thought, hey, this would actually make a great topic for a community call. So that's what we've done here. I'm going to leave this up on the screen as we do Q&A. And again, thank you to Jason and his team for their support on these. Let's look at what other Q&A we have. Cheryl asks, is it possible to do that, to apply different security roles to each account? So the different security roles is a challenge because you can't adjust security roles using the web API. Then you get into a caching mess. So I've certainly seen people do things that, you update a field and then there's Power Automate flows or something or plugins that change security roles, but then you have a cache problem because the cache will not be immediately invalidated. So depends on how many caching headaches you want. But in terms of security roles, yeah, unfortunately, you can't manipulate security roles, which is, good. You don't want users to be able to change their own security roles. So yeah, so you can kind of do stuff with security roles, but you're gonna deal with some caching headaches for sure. Oh, and we got Cheryl's in Spain on August 28th. So okay, I won't do it next month. I'll probably have to bring in colleague to do PCF or SPA because I don't do much of those these days. Let's see. Okay, Kim had a question earlier. So it says, not related to today's topic, curious how you implement branching and pull request code review with Power Pages where multiple developers are working on the portal. Yeah, so the short answer is it certainly can be a challenge. Um, Especially like just in if there's a single developer working on a portal, uh, branching and pull requests and code reviews with Power Pages is challenging. Um, when it comes to multiple, generally what we try and do is kind of keep everyone into their own files. And I'm using the word file here kind of loosely, but like if three people have to work on the same page for whatever reason, give them their own web templates and then include those web templates using Liquid in the thing, so that still there's kind of individual files. Um, Now we do pull requests for kind of all of our stuff. Whether it's kind of with the standard data model, we have scripts that actually take what we'll use, say, the configuration migration tool to export all the work, and then even for things like web files or web templates, we take all kind of the actual code bits of those, extract that into individual files so that we can see the diffs on those from version to version to version. Um, and we've got some of those also for the enhanced data model that kind of go through whether the configuration migration utility or some of the solution stuff, because um, right now, whether it's the out-of-the-box configuration migration utility or the solutions that you may export for the enhanced data model, if you just check those into source control, they're not really in a state that you can properly kind of review them. So what the technique we use is essentially we have scripts that after they've been exported, extract the pieces out that we are usually interested in, so that they can be reviewed on uh, a a regular basis. Um, and so I personally don't use VS Code for desktop, like the VS Code desktop version, a whole lot. So I'm not using the pack CLI to say download my Power Pages site. I don't know how much that would kind of change things. You could, in theory, check in your Power Pages, the pack CLI download. That is another option. Um, I just find that to be there's a lot of stuff in there, and there can be things that you don't really care so much about, and you don't have a great way of filtering that down. Um, but again, so long story short, um, if you have the multiple developers thing is a problem, and the way we solve that is really trying to isolate them into their own single files that they can all work on independently. Another thing you can do when you have multiple developers is use tools like Fiddler, autoresponder, so that the people aren't actually editing the files live in Dataverse. They can do kind of local development within their browser to make all of their changes, and then when they're done, then they push those. So you're not dealing with people who are kind of halfway through something, breaking other people's stuff. So that what's in Dataverse is always something relatively stable, and the people doing the new development are making those changes locally, testing locally, and then only making those changes to the server once they're satisfied with the results. And then again, we're using however you're exporting and saving your files to um, Git or TFS or wherever you're saving them. Then using some post-processing scripts to actually extract out things that are bits of code within data that would otherwise not be easy to pull request and go through the review process. So that's what we're doing. But I appreciate your suggestion about that. We probably could have an entire session on that as well, and so we'll definitely add that to the list of sessions in the future. Okay. There's someone asking about PCF. Now we have had a couple of sessions on PCF controls in the past already. Um, so I think if we were to do another one, it would probably be on that. There's that new SPA stuff. But yeah, check on YouTube in kind of our playlist for community calls. I've done one on React specifically, and I've done one on PCF controls as well. So you can check that out. Let's see. Any other questions? I know we only got a couple minutes here. All right, I don't see any other questions, Jason. I think we could probably wrap it up there.
All right, sounds good. Well, great job as always, Nick. And thanks to everyone in the audience for all your questions. And yeah, with that, we are going to end the recording and end the session, and we'll hopefully see you back here in August. Bye, everyone.
Thanks all.